great to have everybody today and super excited to get into this with you. Hopefully, you're as fired up as I am at the prospect or the possibility of the death of deal reviews. Um, Deal reviews are one of my absolute pet peeves as a seller and as someone now who coaches and trains sellers and sales teams. But before we go into that and how we fix it, just a quick kind of intro for anybody wondering, like, who is this person? Why should I listen? As Marcus said, I went from teaching seventh graders to then closing 6 and 7 figure deals for tech companies. But that road was far from smooth. So whenever I went into tech sales, I started from the absolute bottom. I'd never used Salesforce, never worked a new logo, and it was definitely a big learning curve. I worked late hours trying to make sure I figured it out. And because had been a teacher, I approached it very academically, and the result of that, of like just systematically adding knowledge and skills, was getting promoted to an enterprise role within a couple of years, and then holding sales roles at 3 of the largest tech companies in the world, and also 2 small startups that no one had ever heard of, one of which had 0 inbound, right? And been a full cycle rep at all of those. And so and along the way, uh, you know, did did very well with like performance goals, but it wasn't always like that. And I struggled and worked many hours just trying to crack the code on this, right? Like trying to figure out what works in this role, and created a lot of templates and strategies for myself to solve my own problem. And then that's because I was a teacher. Like, this is the way I was like, well, we have to create a system for this and we have to create a learning path for this. And then I created it for myself. And then now that's what I work with others on. I think just from a proof perspective, or something that's important for to know, is that the stuff I'm going to tell you about, it doesn't just work just for me. It's worked with thousands of reps at some of the largest and smallest startups and tech companies in the world. But enough about me. I want to hear a little bit more about you. In the chat, if you would just put in how long you have been in your role, that would be super interesting for me to know. Just like 1 year, 10 years, 17 years. If you throw that in the chat, like how long you've been in your role, because that also, okay, 5 years. And anything sale, ooh, 14 years, 20 years, amazing. And anything sales, oh, Becky, you start December 1st. Congrats on the new job. Very exciting. 15 years. Okay, lots of veterans. Awesome. Very exciting. And then, ooh, 21, 40 years. Amazing. We have so many veterans. This is great. And it's so great to see people, like, especially in people in enablement, be lifelong learners. It's awesome. Okay, and then next question is, what is the size of what size organization do you work for? So does a company have 20 employees, 200 employees, 2,000 employees? That's just helpful to know as well. So 5,000, 150, 1,500, 5,000. Okay, so hundreds to thousands, 44 different countries. That is definitely a unique challenge that you'll have with working across multiple different companies. Okay, good deal. All right. So going back to what we're here to talk about, which is how do we get rid of deal reviews and to replace them with things that are higher value, right? Replace them with higher value coaching. Deal reviews are some of the meetings, if you think about it, with the highest cost and the absolute lowest return on investment or return on time spent. So think about it. If our orgs have reps that are making $100,000 a year, if they attend 2 hours of deal reviews per week, so that's assuming like one team deal review and then one one-on-one session, and you have 8 reps on a team, for that one team, deal reviews cost that organization $38,461.54 for one team of 8 reps. So if you have 10 teams of 8 reps, that's over $250,000, right? That's a lot of money to spend. It's a lot of money to spend on a meeting. And what most actually, I'll say what I know, what I have seen in deal reviews across organizations, large and small. I'm going to tell you what I have seen them look like, and then I want to hear just a yes or no in the chat if this is what you see in your organization. So deal reviews that I most commonly see are when it's a team deal review. Um, everybody's on the call, and the leader says, walk me through. Oh, and Jay says, was that annual or weekly? That's an annual number. That 38,461.54 is annually for one team of 8 reps. So 8 reps hop on a call. The leader says, okay, we have 12 late stage deals that we're going to review today. If you have a deal in commit, those are the deals we're going to talk about. And Alex, we're going to start with you. And then Alex goes through their 2 deals, and the manager peppers them with questions, asks things that should be easily seen in Salesforce or whatever CRM they have. Lots of times the rep has already been required to update notes into CRM or update notes into a spreadsheet. And this is just a verbal recitation of the state of the deal. There is very little, and then the manager then it becomes an interrogation, not education. Right. So the manager then is just interrogating, well, do we have executive involvement? What is the next step? What can I do here? There's very little coaching that happens during those meetings. So I took a screenshot of in my meeting tracker. I track it when people talk about when managers do not coach them. And this is these 6 quotes are only over 4 days. Right? So we have managers are just scorekeepers. They are not helpful. They don't have time to manage me. I was promised training, but it hasn't materialized. I get no coaching through the sales cycle. And this was from a very senior rep who's doing very well. And he says, like, why is there no coaching through a sales cycle? The books, like I can read books, but it's not sufficient. My manager is hands off. I get no support from current leadership. Like this is the number one complaint that I hear from every rep, from every organization that I work with. I had to zoom out. Like this is what I could fit in a screenshot of the 3-month view of what reps have to say about not getting coaching or not getting effective coaching. And I think managers always, I think first line management, first line sales leadership is one of the hardest jobs in sales. I think every manager wishes that they had more time, that they could spend coaching and helping reps and really digging into deals. I don't think it's a lack of want to. I think it is a way of the way our sales orgs are structured and the pressure that is on first line leaders and the crazy calendars of first line leaders, that they are just simply not afforded the time or the tools or techniques that really enable them to do the coaching that they want to do. And so sometimes what passes for coaching is really more interrogation, right? And what reps really need is specific education around, okay, what can I do in this deal that is at risk, right? So sometimes when managers or sales leaders, when they think they're coaching, that is a way that doesn't work very well, is saying what to do, right, instead of how to do it, right? So I can clearly remember the first time that I really recognized it and crystallized that this was a problem. I was in my first, not my first sales job, but my first tech sales job. And this was like 2017. It was like the year that big eclipse was happening. Because I have pictures of us all, my team out with our eclipse glasses. And I had just come out of a meeting and my manager said, you are really single threaded in this deal. This is a $300,000 deal. We can't afford to be single threaded. We need to multi-thread. And I was like, yeah, cool. Agree. Like, what do you suggest that I do here? Like, what do you mean? Like, which personas should be involved? Should I reach out to them? Should you reach out to them? Right? I got told what to do, not how to do it. We would, if you think about other areas that are performance related, right? Like sports, or like actors, like theater. In no other profession, especially where people are paid as much as sales reps are paid, do they have leadership that just tells them what to do and not how to do it, right? Like, you don't see a basketball coach going, well, just you need to just shoot better free throws. Well, you just need to make more 3-pointers. That's what to do, right? Like, everyone agrees on what to do, but it's how do we coach reps on how to do it? Here's the technique, right? Like, here's how you hold your hand, here's how you hold your feet. It's the how to do it that matters. So, and then once we lock in on a way that of how teaching reps how to do things, then it's a matter of scaling that, right? Because as I look at your answers in the chat, you are enabling teams with hundreds and thousands of sales reps, right? Across continents, right? Sometimes. So just having managers that are able to use good coaching techniques is one thing, but then being able to scale that to the entire org is something else. Okay. And what I have seen, and I'm sure you see this too, is that most of the time sales managers and sales leaders get to be in those positions because they were really good reps. They know how to close deals, or they wouldn't have gotten promoted to a management or a leadership position. And so many times the best playbooks about what reps, not just what to do, but how to do it, lives in the heads of sales managers and sales leaders. And that is the thing, is like, when that is invisible, when I went to outreach in 2020, and they were scaling like crazy, I found a name for this. I was like, tribal knowledge. I was like, I went through and was speaking to all these different reps and all these different coaches and all these different leaders, because I'm like, there's so much tribal knowledge here that is not written down anywhere. So I created my own playbook at outreach, and actually then shared it with our enablement team, because there was so much tribal knowledge. And that was one of the biggest unlocks, was whenever we got that actually out of people's heads and into a playbook that people could actually use. Right. So that's like the problem, right? When that playbook is invisible. But what does it mean? What does good coaching actually look like, right? Like, how do we tell reps not that just they should make more free throws, but like how to do them, right? So how do we make it simple? How do we make it repeatable? How do we make it usable? So for example, things like clean talk tracks, right? That reps can just be like, take it, like plug and play. This is how a good discovery call sounds at our company. Not to repeat like robots, but just so they have a framework of what good looks like, right? We want it to be something that they can just take and easily digest. So we want it to be, again, not just what to do, but how to do it. And I'm going to give you an example of exactly what I mean at the end of this. And I'm even going to give you a talk track that you can use, that you and your reps can use today, right? It's like an example of like what good looks like that you can use. But before I do that, I want to show you kind of the overall picture, like the 10,000-foot view of how that specific coaching, how that specific talk track kind of fits into everything overall. Okay, and Will says, I call those anchors, which are essentially talk tracks to help steer. Yes, yes. I have worked at um, worked at Tableau, I've worked at Salesforce, I've worked at Outreach, again, I've worked at 2 small startups. I have never, ever, as a rep, been handed a framework for a discovery call. Now, I've been handed like, here's our discovery deck. Do you know how few times there's even a talk track in that deck? Like, here are the slides that we use. But if they want me 2 weeks, 3 weeks into that job to go conduct a good discovery, I can't do that with just slides. Like, I need to know, like, what are good, how do we kick off this call, right? Like, What's our point of view? That it is so rare that that even happens. Right. So, Will, I love that idea of anchors, which are essentially talk tracks to help steer. So I'm curious, I do want to hear. So if we think about like if we hear about frameworks and like approaches, how do you guys currently distribute those things, right? Like, so showing reps, like, here's a benchmark, here's an approach for how to run, let's just take discovery, right? So how to run a good discovery call. Where does that knowledge live now in your systems? Is it just decks that they get during onboarding? Does every rep kind of have their own deck? Does the manager do managers say like, hey, this is what our team uses? How, but even just taking like how to run a discovery call, where does that knowledge currently live in your organization? Is it like SharePoint? Like, where does that knowledge live? And while you guys are filling that out, Jay says, isn't talk track traditionally viewed as training specific adjustments to a seller's skills, motion, seller's skills, weaknesses, and motion is more like coaching using the sports analogy? Yes. Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah. So talk track is training, and then there's coaching, right? But in order for you to be able to coach on something, your coaching is like making adjustments, right, to that skill. But in order for them to being coached, they first have to be trained. So I guess I view that as kind of like two sides of the same coin, right? So it's like, so if we go back to the free throw analogy, there has to be some training around like, okay, look, this is in demonstration, like this is how we shoot a free throw. I'm going to show you from this angle, I'm going to show you from this angle, I'm going to show you point first, look at my knees, then look at my posture, then look at my hands, right? Like that's the training. And then there can be coaching after that, right? Like, okay, so remember, so like, okay, remember we talked about, hand position, you're doing this a little bit this way. So I guess I just view that as two sides of the same coin. Okay. Uh, it's under framework. I would understand here sales methodology, reinforcement would be training around it. You train how to take a shot, you coach where they go on the, yeah. Yeah, I think we're on the same page as far as like under in the same coin. Okay, and then so Mark says the frameworks, let's say like for how to run a good discovery, are part of onboarding, dispensed by training. Um, okay. And then the reason I asked about like just thinking about discovery, like how to run a good discovery call, right, there's the training bit of like where do they get this information? And then the next piece, so that's the framework, right? Then we go to feedback. It's hard to give feedback, and feedback can be very frustrating if it's not based on a framework, right? So that framework has to live somewhere about like this is how we run a good discovery call. Then the feedback is whenever that can come in a number of ways, which is actually what we're going to talk about in a second. So that can come from in listening to individual call reviews and giving feedback notes. It can come from using a call like a system like Gong, where it reviews it in batches and says, hey, your talk time is 78% on discovery. Let's talk about how we narrow that to 46%. Right. So that's why I was asking, because in order for there to be a coaching system, we have to start with where the frameworks are, where the knowledge is. And so that's what I was asking about. And then what is your system for feedback? How do reps receive feedback currently? So let's just take the example of discovery, right? So after they run a discovery call, how do they, how is the feedback currently given? Do they get notes on do they get notes in Slack on their individual calls? Is there an after kind of like an after action report by like Gong or something else where it says, hey, your talk time was this? Like, how do your sellers currently receive feedback? Is it one-on-one from managers? Is it done through like some sort of tool like Gong? Is it a combination? Do they upload their calls into a system that evaluates it? Like, how are your reps currently receiving feedback. So throw that in the chat because that's going to affect the direction of the conversation to make it relevant. Okay. Feedback is a unicorn. Even if the tool provides it, they ignore it. Is that fair? Sometimes. Um, I'm curious, notes and gong reviewing in our one-on-one. Okay. When you say feedback is a unicorn, even if the tool provides it, they ignore it. I definitely agree that that happens. What makes you think that they're ignoring it? Meaning like there's no change in behavior? Okay, it says normally feedback comes from our VP of sales. However, it's coming from the CEO right now as we have no VP sales. So Will, does that mean like that's how any feedback is just happening in those one-on-one um calls then? Sounds like feedback is all delivered personally. Says, I've been a part of companies where sales orgs invest significantly in product, training, sales methodology. I've not seen many organizations train sales managers in coaching their teams. I agree. It says, is this kind of training common? Uh, Not in my experience. And I think that explains, which is sad. And Steve, that answering that question. And I think that's why, if you remember my screenshot where reps saying, I don't get any coaching from my manager, I think it shows. I think first line leaders and second line leaders are held to account by leadership for their reps numbers, which is why reps get grilled on numbers, because like that's what people are being held accountable for. And I mean, it makes sense. We're not running nonprofits, we're running businesses. We have to put up numbers, but numbers, we get better if we get good coaching. Um, yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like this is like a common thing, where, being a part of companies where sales organizations invest significantly in product training and sales methodology, but then there's not much work around, um, around helping reps or helping leaders be coaches. And that actually then speaks to the reinforcement piece as well. Is like, okay, so if they have a discovery framework, this is how we run a good call. Sounds like feedback is coming sometimes from a tool, but mostly from like one-on-one in-person sessions with a sales manager or sales leader. And then reinforcement, right? So it sounds like maybe uh, the coaching piece is a gap that you guys see, and that there may not be much reinforcement. Says, okay, let's see. First step is making sure the managers understand the difference between managing and coaching. Most do not make this distinction in their heads. I agree. I 100% agree. Mark, how do you speak to your organization about that? Like, how do you describe that distinction? Because I think that's super important. And I think that would probably be helpful to many people on this call, because it sounds like many people are seeing like that disconnect, and that their own managers are not they're not getting training on coaching at all. Asking the managers to do coaching has become more difficult with market realities. They run after OKRs, each in their own way, training them to coach. Yeah, Robert, I 100% agree. That's what I was saying at the beginning or along the way, is that I don't think this lack of coaching is a lack of want to on a on manager, like first line leadership. I think every manager wishes they had more time to coach reps, because I think they know what it's like to want that as a rep. I don't think it's a lack of want to. I agree. I think it's that managers are being held to account for numbers. And so they're just being grilled on forecasts and that sort of thing. Um, they're not. They're really kind of being, when they are sitting in their one-on-ones, they are getting hammered about like the problem and the symptoms, but not really the underlying thing, which is, do our reps need to be coached on how to have a good discovery call, how to run a negotiation, how to use a give get list, like those sorts of things. Let's see, is it managing versus coaching, or inspection versus coaching? Well, yeah, I think there's Jay, I think there's all of that, right? Because to me, managing is really more about is about like the team as a whole and the rep as a whole. Like it should be helping them with things, even including like career development. Like that's part of managing. Like, hey, generally you've been in a mid-market role for 3 years, you're crushing it. Usually from here people either go to enterprise or they go to management because you are already such a leader and you're already helping your fellow reps and developing them. I can see you being a great manager. Have you thought about that as a career step? Like to me, that's part of managing. Coaching is then like, hey, I've noticed that your win rate is 38%, which is great. I also noticed that at the beginning, conversion, like the conversion of like demos to opportunities is yours is a little bit lower than other folks on the team. I'm curious, is that I'd like to dive into that a little bit more. Is that because you're qualifying harder, so you have fewer opportunities, but they're better opportunities? Or is there an area like, should the other reps be learning from you there? Or should we tweak this a little bit so that conversion goes a little bit higher? Do we need to kind of help define that latent pain a little bit more? So to me, that's coaching. And then inspection would be like that straight up deal review. Tell me about your deal. Tell me what the biggest risk, tell me why it's not going to close, that sort of thing. But Jay, if you have a different definition, definitely open to that. Mark says, make it simple, easy to understand, give them a verbal quiz with a list of actions and some coaching, ask them to match it to the appropriate bucket. We just did this and it was eye-opening. Um, yeah. So Mark, when you said you gave them a verbal quiz with list of actions, some managing and some coaching, you're saying, hey, match these, say this is the action. Is this managing or is it coaching? Yeah, I can see how that would be very eye-opening and probably eye-opening for them as well. I love that idea. Um, Managing is taking care of the tasks assigned to the role, coaching, identifying areas of opportunity. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, I like it. So when we think about, of course, like now AI is everywhere, right? We're all like, we hear AI in all sorts of everyday life, all sorts of sales stuff. And so I think and of course, like most things, it is not black and white. It's not either or, it's a both and. One of the things when I started looking over the data around like coaching and like what and feedback, what AI does well and what humans do well. Again, it can't be an either or. If you try to do just human reinforcement or motivation like across huge teams, their managers are already overwhelmed. It cannot be just a manager listening to every call of every rep and offering feedback over every time. It's just not scalable. Your managers will burn out. But AI you can't do that in isolation either, right? So it has to be, so that blend of both is kind of that sweet spot. And Mark, when you were talking about um, giving them a verbal quiz and list of actions and then matching that, actually, um, whenever I was at Tableau, we actually used a Lego for internal enablement. And one of the things that happened whenever we were switching to an outbounding motion and we were talking about value-based selling is every morning when you logged in, there was like a 2-minute quiz. And some of those were matching, like, hey, this is this part of value selling, because it was just constant reinforcement every day rather than having this huge, like, 4 hour sit and get training about value-based selling and then never talking about it again. Like that's where, so that reinforcement and even like feedback and reinforcement, that's where AI and different AI tools can really, really be helpful because it can automate that reinforcement. It can automate that, the continuation of the learning. So again, it's not like either or, right? It's a both and. Let me see what else is in the chat here. It says, I categorize coaching as a function of managing, but identifying everything in managing. Yeah, I think that would be an interesting exercise, like identifying everything that is managing that isn't coaching. It's almost like that. You could almost use that as like a Venn diagram about like, what fits in managing, what fits in coaching, where's like that sweet spot. I think that could be a very interesting exercise for leaders in the company, because you really would get a very interesting perspective on how different people think about it, and then and the differences in how people think about it, and how the org can actually unify that and make sure that that definition is clearly understood, and that and then consolidate an actual approach so everyone isn't doing it different ways. I'm curious on this AI versus human piece. um, Becky says sweet spot for coaching is 3 to 5 hours per rep per month. Yeah. How are how are you getting that done? Because I see very few organizations where that is actually happening. So I mean, is that like coaching at scale, like in three? So if you think 3 to 5 hours per rep per month, so that works out to basically, if you think like 4 to 5 weeks in a month, that's an hour per week. So yeah, Becky, I'd be interested to understand like how that hour is structured, like an hour per rep per week. I'm running AI and sales trainings, reach most of the sales reps, expanding sales pipeline, establishing boosting sales, even chat GPT for personal one-on-one coaching role plays is very well received. Yeah, not a substitute for an individual manager coaching them. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I agree. It's not either or. It's a both and. And yeah, that is where those tools can be very helpful. Is you lined it out very neatly, which is like looking at prompts and like using like Chat GPT prompts to do meeting prep, doing prompts that help with making follow up faster and also more personalized, right? Better messaging in general, whether that's prospecting or follow up. And yeah, even in Chat GPT for personal one-on-one coaching role plays. What was super interesting, and actually one of the reasons that I even agreed to work with Allega, was when they showed me their AI like coaching, where reps um, were there's like a scorecard for discovery calls, right? And then they did a mock discovery call and uploaded it, and then they got a scorecard, and then the AI was able to give them feedback around like, hey, this was done well, this was an area where we could improve. Because one of the biggest um, complaints, or one of the biggest like blind spots for sales, is when we think about like true performances. Sales is one of the few performance careers where we essentially practice on prospects, right? Like most sales orgs do not have built-in practice time for their reps to practice what good discovery looks like, practice what a good demo looks like, practice what a good negotiation call looks like. And if you think about in no other area of performance would we do that. There is no professional, there's no little league team that goes out on the field without having practice during the week. But yet we have sellers do that, right? That are responsible for $1 million quotas. Makes absolutely no sense. And right, have the doctor practice on his first patient, right? Like nobody wants to be that, and the doctor's like, well, I've never done this before. Like, yeah, Jay, you guys get all the analogies. Yeah, an actor like just running through the script for the first time in front of the live audience, like that's just not going to go well. In no other area of life would we do that. And I totally agree about what you guys are saying about the time constraints of managers. Like they don't have time to review one-on-one every one-on-one call um, with every rep, every discovery call, and listen to the whole thing live. They just don't have time. And Will has pointed out like there are musicians who show up to gigs that do it live, but Jay practiced for decades to do that. Correct. Yeah, there is no. I agree, and so like for example, whenever I was at Salesforce, the rep for the account at JP Morgan Chase, like she would not show up to a call with a talk track, but I mean she would show up completely prepped. But she had been on that account. She had been coaching, or she had been selling for 30 years, and she'd been on that account for 5. And so, yeah, she could show up and do a call where it's not winging it. It's just she's practiced to a point where that she didn't have to go practice like her individual talk track. However, I'd say like the best musician, the best musicians still practice. Michael Jordan was famous for, even though he had amazing talent, like like practicing longer than other people. So yeah, I don't know that we want to. The exception is really probably not what we want to reinforce, but I get that there are folks that do that. Okay, so we think, and like we talked about before, like generally the folks that are in first line leadership or any kind of sales leadership, they got there because they were good at being a rep, right? And so they have all this tribal knowledge, and so then so we, yes, they can give feedback one-on-one. They can, listen to some calls and give some feedback. But again, even if they do that, that's still their tribal knowledge just being poured into one rep, right? Which is really not ideal, because I mean it's better one than none, but you want to be able to give that knowledge to, like, make that available to all of the reps, right? So one of the things that was most helpful to me, and I've had this at multiple jobs, is where in like the learning system, there were folders around what good looks like, right? So folders around like, hey, this is what a good discovery call sounds like and looks like. This is a good pricing call. This is, a good technical demo with the ops team, right? Because, and then I would listen to those. Actually, I would listen to those as I was getting ready, and then listen to them on my way to work, so that I could just ingest what good looks like, rather than, because like that's essentially showing reps how to do it, right? Rather than say, we have to do really deep discovery. Sure. Agree. How do we do that here? What questions? I would actually started collecting, like, what I call like second level pain questions. I started collecting those from listening to those libraries of like what good looks like, because I was like, why would I reinvent the wheel and just come up with my own questions whenever I hear really successful reps using these questions? Like, this is amazing. I would just bookmark it and write it down. It says if the rep uses speech to text transcription, you can use the transcript to gauge their starting point, measure improvement. Yeah. Yeah. With all the transcription tools, that there's no excuse for like not having that. Ooh, I love the idea of internal podcasts. That's awesome. I have not seen that. I have not seen that done very much, but I think it's a great format. And like, given the popularity of podcasts, and even just framing it like that, I think that can be a really engaging way to capture attention and provide learning. Because people talk about, oh well, we have the attention span of a goldfish now. Only if we're not interested, because you have like this understanding of, oh, we have the attention span of goldfish, but there's also like binge watching, right? Like, we will watch 8-10 hours of something that we're interested in. People will listen to hours of podcasts because they're interested in it. So I think I love that idea around that format of internal podcasts, and using that as like an education tool. I love that. As you imagine, I have no problems reaching their reps. I have problems reaching and convincing managers. Yeah. I can see that. I can appreciate that. I think that's a whole different topic, is how do you get managers? I don't know, managers should care about that, because like managers make their numbers when their reps make the numbers. So you would think they would care about that, but yeah, it's definitely a dynamic. Um, so I think whenever we think about like what does it look like to if enablement or coaching is delivered in like one-on-one meetings or these deal reviews that everyone has to sit through, like nobody likes that, right? Like it sucks. Versus having a system for it where I love, I think this cannot be overstated, right? Of just three simple things. Like we have frameworks for things, we have a system for feedback, we have a system for reinforcing it so that we have it, that truly is like a coaching system and not a meeting. Um, um, yeah, it seems like Roberto, sorry, you definitely struck a chord here as far as saying like I have no problem reaching the reps, I have problem reaching and convincing the managers. Um, I think Jay makes an interesting point. He says they don't know to care because they frequently come from the pool of top performers. I think that's a really important point. Like I've said, they get into that role because they were really good at being reps. And that does not necessarily translate into being good at helping other people be good reps, right? I had a and the best example I can give you of this is Mrs. Stenson. Mrs. Stenson was my honors chemistry teacher, and she was like a chemistry genius. She really should have been teaching at like a high level, like Ivy League college, because she was a chemistry genius. I was the farthest thing from a chemistry genius. Like, I mean, I'm smart enough. Like, I mean, like I mean, I was in honors classes, like, but she was so good at chemistry that she had a hard time, number one, explaining her work, like explaining how to do it because she just got it, right? And so she would there, I mean, there's a group of us in that class where we would be like, explain, like we want, like, how did you just do that? And she would literally, I mean, she was very patient and she would try, but you could just tell, like, she would look at you like, it's not hard. Like, how do you not know this? Sometimes people are so good at something that they don't know how to explain it. They just do it. Right? If you think about like Challenger talking about the different kinds of reps, like the lone wolf rep, they really can't explain what they do that's different. They just do it. And that is not those lone wolf reps can make great top performing reps. They do not make great managers because they don't know how to explain it and they don't know how to, therefore they don't know how to recreate it. So um I'm curious. Yeah, this is I want to learn, go to the ace, go to the person who wasn't a natural and how to develop their skills. Yes, that's perfectly said. Um, so I'm curious then, because so many people here on the enablement side, how do you are you then communicating like when you're rolling out something, are you is everything that you're doing getting communicated through managers and you're just hoping that they kind of pass that along to the teams, or do you have reps come to you directly and say like, hey, I'm having trouble with this, do we have a system for this, do we have a template that I can look at for this? I'm curious, is like, what does your communication cadence look like with like, is it mostly with managers, is it mostly with reps, and is there, because like if you have all these reps that are asking for coaching, which so many of them do, I just wonder if there's a way to deliver that where the reps are directly at, because the reps are directly asking for it even if managers don't know for them to ask for it. It says when we have a new tool, people don't even yeah, people don't even get training on how to use its full capabilities. Yes, correct, 100% agree. As a manager, being able to meet people where they are, understand how to teach and coach goes a long way, meeting almost on a basic level. Yep. And sometimes the basic level is like the most important place to start. Roberto says both and word of mouth. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, change management driven, but must have executive sponsorship. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and also like if you're in an organization that doesn't value learning and doesn't prioritize like developing people, like that's going to be a tough spot to be in. No matter where in the org you sit, whether you are a rep who wants to be developed, whether you are a manager who is leading a leader who's leading a team of reps, like they're it's going to be hard for them to get any better if the organization doesn't prioritize learning. And you're going to be a real frustrated enablement person if the org doesn't prioritize learning. New programs should be piloted. Early adopters become evangelists. Yes, um, Jay, that's a great point. One of the most effective things, Tableau had a great, like truly phenomenal enablement function. And one of the things that I noticed that they did was when they were like, for instance, we were talking about value selling. The enablement team, when there was a training, they would introduce the concept, but the actual like teaching portion, they would have a top rep who had piloted the approach already do the training and talk about their results. And it was amazing when they're like, hey, today we're talking about value selling, we're talking about like lesson 2 around anchoring or whatever. And now we're going to, but we know you guys want to hear from your peers. So now we're going to have Alex talk about this. And Alex was the top rep for, North America last year. And she's gone to President's Club 6 times. And last year her attainment was 222%. Here's Alex talking about value selling. I can tell you reps like sit up for that, right? Because they're like, okay, she is clearly proven, she's clearly a top performer and she's having good luck with this, she's signing on for this. Yeah. And I think that that's something that enablement people can take advantage of. I think that's some that coach, like even like sales managers, sales coach, or sales leaders can take advantage of, is highlighting like top performers who can articulate how they got that result, because everyone wants to hear from their peers around what they're doing that's working. I mean, think about it. We want to hear from our peers on everything, right? Like from everything from like Toyotas to toilet paper. We want to look at end user reviews, right? Like we want to hear from peers about what was your experience with this? What are the pitfalls? What should I look at? What should I not look at? I love that idea and that practice of pilot, and then early adopter, and then evangelist. So smart. No matter where in the org you sit. Let's see. Roberto, honestly, at a certain point, you must go to the VP and say, I've tried. We have a problem here. But at least I made the company segment aware. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely an element of speaking truth to power. I think and just practically, I think you also have to be aware of your own position within the organization and your own career. If after being at that organization, if you know that is the culture and it's not going to change, um the world is a very small place and you don't want to burn any bridges. And so like if you know that you get into an org, you know that fundamentally that's their culture and it's not going to change, you telling them that on the way out is not going to change and it's going to piss them off about about what you said. And so I don't know that I mean, I don't know if I would say that. And if you feel like it would be helpful, like they would take that and it would benefit the organization for you to say that, absolutely say it. I just think be careful if it's going to fall on deaf ears and all it's going to do is harm you and make it look like sour grapes, you know, as you take a different job. So it's my 2 cents from seeing that over and over and over. Okay, I see. In a meeting to solve this. Yep, I gotcha. Um, okay, so yeah, I love that we've had Q&A like throughout this whole thing. Phenomenal. One of the things I was going to, as just kind of a like I promised you at the beginning, like I was going to give you like an example framework of like what does good look like, just like good discovery, like how to run a good discovery call. What I am going to do is, oops, hold on, just weirdly maximize my chat. Okay, and then where did my chat go? All right, so in the chat, I'm going to, because we're almost at the end of time here. So I put the link to this document in the chat, just so it is an example of is an example of a framework, right? So if we're talking about, hey, what does a good discovery call look like? No matter what company you're at, no matter what you're selling, what is a good discovery call? Okay, so this is the beginning of that deck. It's, hey, here are 3 ingredients of a simple, effective discovery. Here's a 5-minute video, and then there's the slides that you can use to apply it. We're using an acronym, EMT, to talk about what are the 3 elements that need to be present in a discovery call so it can be effective and valuable for all sides. Excavate pain, give some examples of what this sounds like. Here's the formula. Here's what it sounds like in real life, right? And then going a little bit deeper on, okay, hey, these are the different personas, ask questions based on personas. We want to match urgency, right? So 7 minutes before the beginning of before the end of the call, we want to ask like, hey, here's a question that basically helps us qualify like what needs to happen next, what next steps make sense. And then teaching people how to buy. So excavating pain, matching urgency, teaching folks how to buy. So just a really, I just give you that as an example of a format that's just like super simple, that you can use as the beginnings of, because first we have to have frameworks, then we can do feedback and then reinforcement. Marcus, thanks for that prompt. If we haven't connected on LinkedIn already, I'd love to. You can see more about me if you'd like on my website. And then I love the back and forth that we've had so far. But yeah, any other Q&A any other questions or comments that you have before we go? Like, I definitely want to hear anything else